on the sunnier side was, like try and sell my shares in the company, or, one of the items was to give my shares to Phil, which if I would have done that, that would have like been a temporary relief of pain, but that would have really sucked in the long run. I would probably lost out on $100 million. On the darker side, there were like kill myself items on the list. And so the thing that sort of emerged as a lesson from that, because how we resolved it was I called Phil and said, hey, I've been struggling with this inside for like 6 months. I need to talk to you about it. And he came out and we spent the day together, and he had perspective on it. And he was just like, hey, JB, like I've noticed a little bit of this. And the truth is we can hire leaders. We can hire see something O's. Like we can't hire out what you do though. So you need to go back to that, and we'll find managers and things like that.
Hi, this is Sean Greeley, and welcome to the Secrets to Their Fitness Business Success podcast, where industry leaders share their secrets, strategies, and step-by-step systems to turn your fitness passion into a highly profitable business. Now, after you've listened to the show, head on over to npefitness.com/podcast to download the show notes and get access to our free e-course on how you can start and grow a profitable fitness business. You'll see how over 45,000 fitness entrepreneurs have created more profit, revenue, and happiness with their business, and get instant access to our 3 most popular fitness business building guides. The training is 100% free, and you can access it now at npefitness.com/podcast. Now let's get on to the show. Coming from Los Angeles, this is the Secrets to Their Fitness Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Sean Greeley, founder and CEO of NPE, and this is episode number 1 from 0 to 200 million, how growing precision nutrition almost killed Dr. John Berardi. John has been a personal friend of mine for a number of years, and I'm honored that he's shared some very personal stories of struggle and how he's overcome those struggles to grow in this episode. If you don't know John, he's absolutely brilliant and one of the top thought leaders in the fitness industry. He's had one of the best growth runs and an incredible exit, growing PN from 0 to $200 million valuation, and he's super passionate about leading transformational change. He's done it through his work at PN, and now he's doing it again with the launch of the Changemaker Academy and his new book, Changemaker, Turn Your Passion for Health and Fitness into a Powerful Purpose and a Wildly Successful Career. You're gonna learn a lot in this episode, so be sure to take notes, and let's jump in. Okay, welcome everybody. We're here for a really great interview. I'm excited to be here with my good friend, Dr. John Berardi. John, we've been friends for a long time, and excited to have you on the show and share a little about your history and story, which is frankly, one of the best in the fitness industry from my perspective. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me. Thanks to everyone who's about to listen to us. Hopefully we provide some nuggets and some motivation and some inspiration to help them along their entrepreneurial journeys as well.
Awesome. So for those who don't know you of your background, which if you don't know John, where are you? But he's been around for quite some time. He's one of the co-founders of PN, built up Precision Nutrition to be arguably one of the most successful companies in the industry ever, and is still going on to great things. Had a great entrepreneurial exit a couple years ago from the company and slowly transitioned, and is not only a phenomenal entrepreneur, is an incredible educator, leader, PhD, and done incredible work in nutrition, advised a lot of great companies, athletes. But he's one of the things I really admire and respect about John. He's an incredible father and husband, and really balances out the whole aspects of being a good human being, not just being a good entrepreneur and business owner. Certainly, John, you're a great example for all in so many ways, and so excited to unpack that a little bit on the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. That means a lot to me. A lot of the latter things that you mentioned are things that I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do well. And so people recognizing them and saying nice things about that means the world to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's tell people a little bit about a quick summary of your background. So, tell people how you started PN and the journey of building up PN.
Yeah, I mean, the trajectory probably goes all the way back to high school for me, which is, I was a terrible high school student. I got very bad grades, largely because I was drunk and high most of the time, skipping school, and was not on a good path. Towards the tail end of my high school experience, I was in sort of a car crash with a group of friends, and it was a big wake up call for me. I expected to die that night. I didn't, thankfully, gratefully. And then sort of the next year of my life was about sort of a reimagining, and, these Hollywood kind of stories where, you're on your own sort of beginning anew on this new hero's kind of journey, leave out what I think is a particular reality that's not popular to discuss. But, after that night of that car crash, I was like, I need to do something different with my life. And I certainly can't hang out with any of these people anymore. And so the next year to 2 years of my life was incredibly lonely because I, decided I wasn't going to drink and do drugs anymore. I decided I wasn't going to hang out with the same people anymore. So now I have like literally zero coping mechanisms or of my old coping mechanisms for life. And so I stumbled into the gym, and that's kind of where the rest of this trajectory began. Like I just was like, hey, maybe I should just fill some of my time working out, building some muscles, getting strong. Maybe this is a nice way to reinvent myself. And I was really, really fortunate that the owner of the gym, and he owned a couple of gyms in our town and the surrounding communities. And this guy was like someone that a high school kid, teenager kid would really look up to. He was a handsome guy, drove a nice car, had a beautiful girlfriend, owned a bunch of gyms, was huge. He was 240 and competitive bodybuilder and power lifter. And so he kind of noticed me flailing around in the gym and kind of took me under his wing. And both when it came to working out, I eventually became his training partner, and we even went on to compete in the Mr. USA contest together a few years later. But also just mentally, emotionally, intellectually, he was always, he'd kick my butt in a workout in the gym, and then he'd send me home with books to read, about so everything from philosophy to motivation to finance, and he introduced me way back in the day to Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and Stephen Covey, and and he just made me promise him I'd go get an education. He's like, I'm not going to ask anything of you except for to go out and go to school. And so that really kicked me off in the direction I was to head, and also sort of embedded this deep love of health and fitness, both as the vehicle for personal transformation, but also as a way to pay back the mentorship and coaching that I received from this one individual who really is, the most influential person in my history. And so that's what I set out to do. So, I went to school and I didn't know what I needed to learn or how or what I wanted to be. I come from an immigrant family. So the dreaming big and having a business and making a lot of money was never really anywhere in my mind. My parents grew up in a little village with no running water and no electricity in the house and no education. And so, I was just exploring my interests. So I would take a bunch of psychology classes and take a bunch of physiology classes and then muscle biochemistry and stuff like that. And then somehow I was good at those things because I had like a new commitment to my education. And so all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm like pursuing a PhD in exercise and nutritional biochemistry, but fully realizing like that's not the path I'm going to go down. The university professor, researcher, I was doing those things, but it really wasn't my passion. I wanted to be back out in the industry, if you will. And so towards the tail end of my grad school, I just started writing for publications, which was based on some work that I was doing with coaching. So I paid my whole way through school all the way by doing personal training with clients. And then I started working with athletes, and then I was doing sort of lifestyle coaching. And then as my skills grew and as my research experience grew, I was doing physiological testing, and then I was doing nutrition work. And so I was writing about those experiences, so I was kind of an odd guy because I had this research training, but also like years of competitive bodybuilding and powerlifting and working with all kinds of different sports, from cross-country skiing to bobsled to whatever else. And so I got a lot of recognition for that writing. And then that sort of parlayed itself into, okay, how do I, like if I wanted to assume for a minute that I don't want to have a real job when I get out of school, what would I do? And so that's when I met Phil Caravaggio, who co-founded Precision Nutrition with me. And he's like, hey, there's maybe a way to consider this. Like, why don't we build out a website and, do an early, like what now would be called an information product business. But back then there wasn't a name for it. People didn't have their own websites back then. I even told Phil when he proposed the idea, I was like, that'll never work, man. Like I try and go on the web now and everyone was on dial-up. I'm like, it takes 20 minutes to load a simple HTML page. So, and he's like, trust me. And Phil was a systems design engineering student. So he was building web interfaces and he was working with IBM, and, a bunch of big companies, and he sort of had seen the future. So that's what we did. We started sort of an information product business. And then a couple of years into that, we were doing okay. We were selling products and services and making decent money and a couple $100,000 a year. And then we were encroaching upon about $1 million a year. And I was invited out to a company that was servicing the financial industry. And what they were doing was coaching programs for team members that worked at big companies in the financial industry. And so it was all online, it was digital, and they wanted me to create the nutrition modules. And so I went and met with them, and it wasn't a good fit for what I wanted to do, but the idea really resonated with me. Like, what if we created a similar kind of group coaching program that's not geographically limited, so people can work with us from all over the world, and we could help them through lifestyle change. And so then we built an interface and we built a program, and we launched what I think is the first group lifestyle, nutrition, exercise coaching company on the internet. And again, this is so passe now that like everyone has this now. It seems so uninteresting as I hear myself saying it, but I'm like, there's literally no one doing this. We were the first. We built a platform. We hired engineers. We like, no one was doing this in health and fitness.
It was groundbreaking at the time.
Yeah, it was novel and it was new and it did really well. And then after a while of doing that, we were getting a lot of attention, and a lot of professionals said, hey, can you teach us how you guys are doing that? Like, how do you do group coaching that's so scalable and actually has a meaningful impact on people's lives? Because it's really easy to presuppose that either you're going to do like small group and one-on-one stuff and have a big impact, or large group stuff and the impact diminishes, right? So there's an inverse relationship between like personal touch and positive outcome. And we were like, yeah, but what if we presumed that wasn't true? What if we tried to create a program that worked as well or even better and could be done at scale? And that was how we went into this, and it was working. And so professionals wanted to learn it. And then that's where the certification came from. And so we launched what it was the first nutrition certification for health and fitness professionals. And people thought we were so dumb because we did that at a time when literally every personal training organization said, you're not allowed to talk nutrition. It's against the law, it's immoral, on down the line. And I just had this inkling that this was going to be a thing. And now fast forward today PN's, coached over 200,000 people, over, I think 120,000 students have enrolled in the certification program. And then right around 2015, 2016, we started thinking like, how can we tie the two together? I mean, we have all these professionals who are learning from us how we do things. And then we have a whole platform for actually doing those things, but we didn't have a way to put them together. So we launched a program called Pro Coach, which was basically opening up our software to all of our certified professionals so that they could use it with their clients and with them as the coach. So now they have this proven system that we've done a bunch of research on and we've shown reliable outcomes with, and it's all built, the platform's all built. And so then they can start using it in their practice. And then that, became a software as a service model. That was the first recurring revenue model we ever had. Now all of a sudden, if people end up using it and liking it and staying, now we don't need them to buy again. They're just paying monthly. And then each round, another whack of new professionals comes on top of that. So it becomes sort of an exponential growth process, both in terms of revenue and reach. All of a sudden you have 10,000 professionals, each working with 50 people, and the impact really goes to a place we could never have had when we were, doing all the coaching in-house ourselves. And I remember, within 1 year of launching ProCoach, we were really pleased that we had coached more people through the ProCoach platform in 1 year than we had in 10 years coaching people through, our own coaching efforts. So it just became this beautifully scalable thing. So then that takes us up to December 2017. That year, 2017, there was just a lot of very proactive interest from various people in the industry and outside the industry in investing in PN. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about this, about selling a company, what it meant to get outside investment. PN never had any. We just bootstrapped and grew from revenue. And probably the truth is we probably looked down on the other path, and a lot of my own biases back then are slightly embarrassing to me now, but I used to be like, oh, these Silicon Valley idiots, whatever. This is what happening in my head. And it was just ignorance. I didn't really understand how any of the games worked. But it got to the point where people were just calling us and saying, we'd like to buy PN. Phil and I were like, do we want to sell PN? I mean, we're having a good time. We have a great team. We love the people we work with. We're proud of our work. I don't have any interest in selling this thing. And Phil's like, I don't either. But I bet if we at least went down the path to exploring this, we'd get a masterclass in finance, in, bringing on partners, transaction, all that. And along the way, we learned that, and we were growing fast at the same time too. And we hit a point where we both looked at each other and realized, like, hey, if anything were to go wrong at PN, like, we could sell everything we own, the two of us, and not even cover 1 month's, team employment, like, man, that's not good, and we have money in the bank and stuff, but for PN, but still we're like, we don't have the financial wherewithal to support a company as big as we have now. And there's companies out there that do. What would that look like? So we went down that path, and it was amazing. I mean, it ended up being a very competitive process, which is what I recommend for anyone selling their company. The first company that contacted us to buy or invest in PN threw out a number. We ended up selling PN for about 8 times that number. So what was the defining factor? It was just a competitive process. It's like in real estate, when there's a hot market and you create a bidding war, they call it, where you have a bunch of parties coming to the table, a little nervous they're not going to get the house that they want. So you have all bids final by such and such a day. You show the house often before that day, and you tell everyone, okay, cool, we're not showing you what the other parties are going to bid. Here's, make your best offer. And that's how it ended up working out. And so not only did we have, I think we ended up with over 35 offers on the company, a great group of partners to select from, but we also had a premium price that we could sell for. And so that sort of took us right up to December 2017. And so now PN's owned 80% by a private equity company. That was the partner we ended up choosing. Phil and I own 10% each, and the company just continues to do extremely well. I mean, PN's growing 40% year over year still. And, it's when we ended up selling, the valuation was close to $200 million. And I think probably inside of 2 more years, it'll be 500. The valuation will be close to $500 million.
Yeah, the numbers get exponential pretty quickly, right? And the growth has just been amazing. And obviously having got to know a lot of the great team that is still on at PN and continues to take it to great places, it just seems like the work and the output just continues to get better and better and better. And I know that's a lot of fear for entrepreneurs about selling a company as well. I don't want my baby that I built to go down, because I'm not there. And just seeing, a great a great company come in who makes a purchase, who can make the right investments, can bring on new team members who have new skill sets and know the next moves that, you don't have the experience in necessarily, or the team in place to do, and see how it goes from strength to strength has got to be, inspiring and a feel good story for you.
Yeah, it is. I often think about what is essentially heralded as like an entrepreneurial triumph story, which is like the Steve Jobs story, like when he was leading Apple and then they sent him away and then they brought him back. And so he's leading Apple and it's crushing, and they sent him away and it just tanks. And then they bring him back and he saves the day again. Hooray, entrepreneur, Steve Jobs. Like, having gone through this journey now, like I can't help but think, like, why did he leave them in such shambles? You know what I mean? Like, why did he have to come back and save the damn thing? Like, if you're doing great leadership, then you should be building a company that's going to do incredible when you're not there. And obviously, there's a host of other factors, but it feels like a heroic, individualistic kind of effort, and it's a great story from that perspective. But it also represents, I think, like a leadership failure. Like, what the fear of leaving your baby in someone else's hands, and it to do poorly, or embarrass your legacy or whatever, is kind of contingent upon you. Like, if you create a competitive process, then you'll get a bunch of partners to choose from. Then you have to vet them really well and choose appropriately. And then you have to continually invest in building a relationship so that you can spend some time helping them understand your vantage and point of view of the culture of the company. And then you have to hire people to take over your roles. And you have to vet them really well and make sure they're the kind of people who can do a great job here. All of it's easier said than done, but it's the requirement. There's no like shirking. And I see loads of people walk away from their company, selling their company, and they feel no compulsion to do any of the things I just said. And that's like the surefire way for it to embarrass your legacy and not do well.
Yeah. Yeah. Or to validate, like this, oh, it's all me, and, an
That's
ego
right.
play, which is, the other dark side of it. Right. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, see, without me, this is nothing, right? And which is a very egocentric kind of perspective. And I actually credit our work running Holacracy for the last 6-7 years at PN for helping me get to a place where I could be that way. Where one of the central tenets of Holacracy is separate role from soul. Right? So who you are in the business isn't who you are. It's just a subset of who you are. It's a small circle within the grander circle. How can I detach from the ego and all there's obvious rewards of being successful and attached to a successful company, but how can I be a person okay without any of that? There's real advantages operationally to detach role from soul. But then there's real advantages post-transaction as well. It made the transaction process way easier for me because I'd already done this work. There was no ego attachment left,
And for those who, just to back up, for those who aren't familiar with Holacracy, and would you just give a brief summary? So obviously, and you and I have had some discussions for the years. It's a model for structure and communication within an organization. That's a different type of structure, and creates a different type of culture. Maybe just give a little overview, but also I'd love for you to share. We've had some great conversations around how that structure fits really well with some certain types of companies that it's a good fit for, and industries, and different type of people in that work that is gotten great praise, but also I think a lot of people, there's probably a lot of people who struggle with that as well.
Yeah, totally. So what it is, it's like an organizational structuring kind of thing, and anyone who knows me knows I hate like the fetishization of things. So when you give something a term, then it becomes a thing, and then we have to talk about it separately from being a human on this planet. So really what organizational structure is the rules for being together within our company. So how do we relate to each other as team members, as employer-employee? Is it hierarchical? Is it flat structure, meaning there's really not bosses and things like that? And so the Holacracy is a structure where the presupposition is you're going to hire talented people who are able to make decisions. They're grown-ups, they have autonomy, and you should give them independence to make decisions about maybe how to best do their particular work. Let's not do everything. Like if someone works in client care and has never worked in strategy a day in their lives, they shouldn't be making strategy decisions. It doesn't mean we're all equal in different roles. It means that if my job is strategy and I so happen to be the founder of the company and I've never worked in client care, then I really have to respect the experience and talent and daily work of the people in client care. So the idea is just kind of, in Holacracy, we don't think in terms of boss, so leader, bunch of managers, people working for those managers. We actually just have to we get really explicit on who's doing what. Roles have specific definitions, not just the boss of X or I work for Y, but like my role is clearly painted out. And then how that relates to other work in the company is clearly painted out. There are still people who control budgets and still people who can say yes or no to various projects. But it's much more independent than a traditional hierarchy. And so it really, really resonated with who we were at PN. I mean, we were a coaching company. We believe that health and fitness professionals should orient to their clients this way, right? Historically, it was, okay, I'm the coach. I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to do it. And if you don't, you're rebellious or lazy. No, we don't believe that. We believe we should interact as two independent, autonomous adults with agency. And then we figure out a path to go forward together. And so if that's how we believe in coaching, we have to believe that about our company as well. So that's the idea behind Holacracy, and people can go unpack more of that. There's some great materials on it. But like you said, I mean, some companies have tried it and it's been a real failure. And, I don't know all about the insides of their cultures. PN at one point was hired to come consult with Zappos when they were trying to implement Holacracy. And, I think it fits particularly well in companies with knowledge workers. So people who are coming with a deep skill set and a lot of experience, who don't want to be told to do what to do by some arbitrary distinction of management, for people who are grown-ups, who like can show up to work, sharing responsibilities and working in a team. So these are the things we would screen for. And I think it works particularly well in a remote environment, which is the kind of company that we were. We never had a headquarters or anything like that. We were always remote from day one. Even Phil and I didn't live in the same city when we started the company. And so I think in the remote environment, there's almost no other way to be than, having this distributed authority model. So that, I think it tends not to work in companies with a deep entrenchment of hierarchy. And I think it tends to work with a group of people who maybe are slightly allergic to hierarchy and who are used to working in remote environments with shared accountabilities and responsibilities. So, and again, I took a lot out of it. I think our company has a really unique culture as a result of it. But again, I took a ton out of it personally and got a lot of personal growth out of it. And that, I think, is the other part. The leadership has to be willing to step into a new space and say, I don't know how to lead this way, so I'm going to learn alongside you all, rather than I have to have the answers and I'm just going to tell you how it has to be,
Yeah, I love that. And I'm so happy you shared that work you did really supported a great transition for you and a great transition for the company. I'd love for you to share, if you're looking back, in many ways, you've done what so many entrepreneurs set out to do: build a great company, makes a big impact, have a great exit, and have a great windfall for for you and your family and for everybody involved for many, many years to come as a result. Looking back on where you started and where it ended, the PN journey, we got more to talk about in the next phase here in a second. But what advice would you give yourself, looking back to, your younger self back in the early days of PN and where you ended?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have a few things that now I'm like, oh man, a lot of it has to do with my inner life, less outwardly. I mean, we had a great run at PN, like a enchanted run. I mean, there was rarely a thing that we did that didn't work. You know, um, there were some hairy moments along the way, but they were small comparatively. Um, and so the rest of it was just like how I was inside. And there are two things that really come to mind. One, I, you know, we'll talk about my new book later, I'm sure, but one of them I recount in the book, and it was, you know, there was a point about halfway through the journey where, you know, when you don't know anything, like I don't have any business training, there wasn't like a deep thread of entrepreneurship through any of my upbringing. So I'm like just trying to figure it out as I go. And so where do you turn to? Well, you turn to, you know, this was pre-podcast and stuff. So you just turn to books and magazines and stuff. And so, you know, like I think, you know, picked up from various books I read and Inc. magazine and stuff like that. Um, I developed this belief that a founder, you know, starts out as the jack of all trades doing everything, then becomes a manager as they hire a few more people, then has to level up and become a manager of managers, so a leader, as we might call it, or a C something O. And I felt like that was the appropriate and correct way to run a company, you know? And and if I didn't want to do that, then I had to suck it up and grow, you know. And I didn't want to do that. You know, it was just so clear. Like I like what I like doing. I'm probably world class at what I'm good at, and so I was having to do all the things that were not that, you know. And so about halfway through PN's journey, I was getting really depressed and toggling back and forth between just depressed and pissed off. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm in meetings and I'm managing team and I'm not writing anymore. And I'm not like doing content. I'm not doing ads. I'm not doing research. None of the stuff that I really love. There's literally no time in the day for that unless I rob time from my family or my workouts or my self-care or my personal growth to do that stuff. And again, I was getting pissed, and then after a while, it became depressed to the point where I mean, I still have it. I have it written down. Like I made a list of all the ways I could get out of this scenario that was making me so miserable for so long. And you know, we had it. We had just had our second child, so I'm sure sleep deprivation and all this was playing into it. But you know, my list on the sunnier side was, you know, like try and sell my shares in the company, or you know, one of the items was give my shares to Phil, which if I would have done that, I would have like been a temporary relief of pain, but that would have really sucked in the long run. I would probably lost out on $100 million. Um, but on the darker side, there were like kill myself items on the list. And so the thing that sort of emerged as a lesson from that, because you know how we resolved it was I called Phil and said, hey, I've been struggling with this inside for like 6 months. I need to talk to you about it. And he came out and we spent the day together, and he, you know, he had perspective on it. And he was just like, hey, JB, like I've noticed a little bit of this. And the truth is we can hire leaders. We can hire see something O's. Like we can't hire out what you do though. So you need to go back to that, and we'll find managers and things like that. And that was literally like, you know, began a process of, again, what I teach in the book, exploration of purpose, identification of unique abilities, and then sort of making concrete of your value system so that you can actually build your life around your purpose, values, and your unique abilities. And so we had exercises that went through this. So, I mean, really, you can consider who I was before this thing happened and after in work is two different people. And after was a result of these very explicit intentional exercises. And we can call them unique ability finders and stuff. But really what we're talking about is not copying other people's success, not like creating a false narrative about what it means to be successful, copying other people's experience, and not being yourself. You know, so that for me has been just a profound teaching point going forward, where it's like, man, I was literally trying to erase myself in the process. And you can you could paint it as some lofty, oh, it was personal growth. You know what I mean? But really it was like an obliteration of self. Like, no, you need to stop doing all the things you're interested in and good at and have been rewarded for, and do all together totally different things if you want success. So the lesson really in that is, you know, if you want to find what I think is the rarest but most rewarding way to have a career with longevity, it has to be centered on this idea of you, who you are, your unique abilities, your purpose, your values, and then springing from there. Because I was at an event last weekend in Seattle speaking, and I was just watching every speaker come up. And these are the people in front of the 300 attendees. And every single one of them was so uniquely themselves. You know, they had success like leveraging and amplifying the thing that made them unique and special. And every one of them was different in that regard. And I was just like, this is just such a testament to this thing that I've had an inkling of for so long now, but we actually treat it like it's a bug rather than a feature. You know what I mean? Like, we got to eliminate these weirdnesses, like smooth out those rough edges of your personality, and follow the success path. But if you really look around, you're like, wow, no, those are actually features. Those are the things that great businesses and cultures get built off of. So that's one lesson. The other one's smaller, but still relevant. I pursued a lot of my early career with a lot of, I carried a lot of anxiety and urgency around with me. Anxiety around all the things we weren't doing, and urgency about, you know, we need to go faster, we need to go faster, we need to go faster. And nowadays I am in a totally different place, and I don't feel those things anymore. And it's like carrying around for 20 years a heavy backpack that you don't even know that's on, and then you set it down and you're like, I didn't even realize, what a relief. And it's so strange because this is all happening inside my head, but people are coming up to me and using words that resonate with the same imagery I have. Like, I was at a thing and a woman came up to me and she was like, I know we just met, but you seem so like light, you know? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Light. I feel like I put this heavy backpack down. And so that, you know, I've spent a lot of time in therapy and counseling. I think it's really critical for everyone, but entrepreneurs especially. And you know, I just realized that I didn't need to have an exit to put the backpack down. You know, I used sort of the exit to really just go, who's taking this thing off? But I didn't need to have an exit to put the backpack down. That urgency, that anxiety was fed by an incorrect way of thinking. That I know now that's what it was, and I actually know how to fix it now. You know, and so as I start new ventures, you know, which you know about and we can talk about, it's a totally different feeling going into them. You know, and it some of it has to do with the financial wherewithal I have now, but the rest of it has to do with this new perspective on, hey, how can I narrow down? Like, instead of having anxiety by all the things that I'm not doing, how can I just choose very, very thoughtfully and intentionally the few things that are worth doing and just do those, like do them extraordinarily well. And then when I'm done, just call it a day, you know, rest and get ready for the next thing that I'm going to do in a really big, impactful way that matters. And again, I think I had been influenced by the action taker culture in health and fitness right now. You know, you can't go to an event or read a thing without someone telling you to be an action taker. You know, what's the one thing you're going to do right after I leave this stage? And it's like, I don't know, maybe that works for some people. But for me, I think you should spend a minute thinking about what the right action to take is before you just go start working hard on something that may not actually lead to what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, it really speaks to the work that we do at NP and our message around strategy. And, we talk
Yes.
a lot about how so many people, they think growing your business is really, it's about getting leads and getting clients. And, intuitively, I'm a service provider. I get more leads, I get more clients, I have more revenue. Revenue solves problems that not having revenue creates. That should be the path. I just got to go do that if I want to grow.
Right.
And really our message is stop. Stop thinking that way and step back and really think about the deeper pieces of what is the money math that creates profitability and cash flow in your business model. What is the things that you do to support great retention and client acquisition? A lot of people through these mid-stage, service companies are, they got there by getting clients, but they're missing the piece. It's the game of and. It's the get clients and keep clients in this recurring revenue models. And then, to your point, speaking about building the leadership capacity within your organization so that your life gets better as you grow, not worse, because without that in place, everything just sucks more as you grow. Right. So it's so important to, I speak about this every day, every time I can. Just think differently, right? And I think that's the message we're both committed to sharing.
It is, yeah. This is actually a section header in the book. And this, it's not just a theoretical thing. Like, I grew up with people who worked harder than almost any entrepreneur I've ever met. Just a group of immigrants with they came with no education, with minimal skills. And now some of them were escaping persecution and maybe certain death. So it was an upgrade. But nevertheless, some of these people were working hard, harder than anyone I've met, and didn't get the rewards that everyone tells you that action takers get. You know what I mean? So it can't just be working hard. There has to be pointed in the direction of the thing you want to accomplish. And that, I think, is what's challenging for folks and why they need help. They need a process. They need help from their friends. They probably need some kind of coaching. And just to get to the point where, the way I think of it is, I come from those immigrants. I can't not work hard. That's in my DNA now. It's been bred into me. But when I die or retire, I'd like to know that the thing I chose to work on was going to bring the rewards I was seeking. I'm going to work hard anyway. So wouldn't it be more fun if I worked just as more hard and got meaningful relationships and done impactful work and got paid really well and all those things? I just feel like, it's like the old story, like an airplane leaves New York and it wants to fly to Southern California, and you change its trajectory, its angle of takeoff by 2 degrees, and it ends up in Seattle. That's how I think about this. Like, that's where your point of strategy, it is about working hard, but you have to work hard on the right things and think differently. And that's, what I had to learn along the way, for sure.
Yeah. And I think for our industry, particularly, not just this, head in the sand mentality, like, I'll just work harder and everything will work itself out. Like, no, you can work harder and everything just goes to complete failure. Right? That's not like proven to work out. I think, people really need to be able to engage thinking about the world around them differently. Right. So
yeah. And a great analogy is working out, right? Like, you build muscle, you build capacity, aerobic, anaerobic, in the recovery from exercise, not during the exercise. So what is your recovery from hard work? Those are the spaces where quiet reflection and thoughtfulness and seeking feedback has to come into play. And then you do another big workout effort, and then, okay, now is recovery time. I think if a lot of people working in health and fitness thought about their business, their work, the same way as they do about exercise, they have a meaningful analogy that they can lean on.
Yeah. So that's a great place to transition. And I want to get to some other things in this conversation today that I think are important to share on the show. And so, you have this tremendous exit from PN. You have, more money than you'll ever spend in your lifetime for you and for generations of your family. You've achieved tremendous success in the impact the work has done. And you don't change your life that much in terms of like, which you guys get a lake house and like, that's kind of it, like, I remember we had a great conversation, during that time, and spent time with you guys, and then we left and, a boat arrived. So we missed the boat on that trip, but look forward to the next one. But you were inspired to write this book, and I'd love for you to talk about what inspired you to write the book. Why go, what are you most, driven to go do now, and what inspired, what's soon to drop here, and what is it, November 2nd, right?
Yeah, well, this is a bit of an interesting discovery process for me now too, right? Like what happens after the exit or whatever. So, when Phil and I sold the majority of our ownership in PM, my first thought was, hey, this might be the last thing I do in health and fitness. So what I'd love to really spend some time on is capturing all the lessons I've learned over the last 30 years in the field, like career lessons, if you will. So the book ended up, we ended up calling it Changemaker: Turn Your Passion for Health and Fitness into a Powerful Purpose and a Wildly Successful Career. And the idea being, like, I started out just like everyone else. Like, for whatever reason, anyone who's decided to work in this field has a superhero origin story. Like whatever spider bit you that turned you into like health and fitness Spider-Man or woman, there's a story behind that. I shared a bit about mine. I think it's worth unpacking your own. Why are you in this field? Of all the things you could be doing, why here? Why now? But then I look around and I see all these people bit by this, radioactive health and fitness spider, but they have no idea how to turn that even into a purpose, let alone a career. And I was like, I figured this out, and I learned a lot of lessons along the way. So I want to capture those. I want to capture them in a meaningful way, not in a, here's what I think are the best practices, but what did I really learn these last 30 years? What's a real lesson rather than just a superstition, So I thought this would be pretty easy, but it took 2 years and it was pretty excruciating, actually, to come up with non-bullshit answers to the question of what did I learn, And so, what we ended up producing is this Changemaker book, and it's got sections on career, and it's got sections on coaching, and it's got sections on business, and it's got sections on reputation and on education. Like, how do you build future you through a thoughtful education process? And so I was like, great, I'm going to capture all this, loads of personal stories, loads of PN stories, most of the stories, though, come from my personal life, my interaction with my family and my friends and things like that, and what they taught me and how I brought that into business. And at the end of the process, I was like, as I mentioned to you, like Amanda was like, hey, so now that the book's written and you're just trying to produce the physical object, like, what are you doing when you're in your office during the day? And I was like, I think I have to start a new business, honey. And she was like, do you want to? I'm like, no, I don't want to, but it's the right thing to do right now, because career is a thing that, again, like, my professional life is marked by that point I talked about earlier, where I was just doing what I thought I needed to be doing versus a very intentional look at how I'd be spending my life. And so I'm like, I know how to teach people how to do this. We did this with every single person at PN, unique abilities and values and purpose, and try and create a place where every person to the left of you and every person to the right of you hey, they're here doing their unique abilities within their purpose according to their values. What a great culture that creates, So I'm like, I need to share this with the world. I need to share our way of looking at business. So we created that, and then really the academy sprung out from that. And so the idea being, like, the book is a great start, but what if you want someone to walk you through how to do this in the context of your actual life, with some peers? So that's really the next phase. The book's coming out in November, so really soon. It's available for pre-order now, and people are ordering it like crazy, which is really exciting. And then after that, assuming the book does really well, then we're going to bring out some courses and some events and some meetups. And this is one of the part I'm most excited about, connecting people in geographically related locations.
No buses involved. Inside
No
joke.
buses. Yeah. Um, and allowing them to sort of, congregate and create community with and support other health and fitness professionals where they live. So rather than these people being adversaries, they are your, team of superheroes. They're your X-Men, where these are the people who are rooting for you and sharing strategies and ideas. And I'd love to see these meetups all over, North America, UK, Australia, Europe, where people can just get together with other people trying to level up themselves, but also the entire field. So that's really what's next for me. The idea of the Changemaker book and the Changemaker Academy. And people have asked, how's this different from a lot of like business and entrepreneurship coaching that's out there nowadays, like NPE or others? And I'm like, I think it's fundamentally different. What we're talking about is creating a sustainable career. I'm not delving into the same things you are, in terms of how to do the X's and O's of business building. That's not really my passion. My passion is to help people decide whether they should go into entrepreneurship in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, this is an area that I think is sorely lacking. Folks who aren't making much money in health and fitness today, their presupposition is that, well, I worked as a trainer for the man. The only way to be successful is to become the man, right? And there's so many other paths for that, to be successful in this field. PN was recently looking for a head of product, right? So someone who could help with digital products, in particular ProCoach or software I mentioned earlier. And so they found a really great individual who was, and actually all the applicants, and I had no idea, but we're interviewing people, and like the average salary for a head of product at a big health and fitness company is like over 500 grand US. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, so these are people who are passionate about health and fitness and like technology, and they found a way to lead teams building technological products in health and fitness, and they're making salaries of $500,000 or more a year. And there's all kinds of roles you can have nowadays working for health and fitness companies that aren't entrepreneurial. I don't think the entrepreneurial journey is for everyone. And that's why I would rather spend a few minutes figuring out what your unique abilities are and purpose and values, and then decide, rather than just copycatting and saying, well, I see those people over there who seem to run their own businesses. It kind of looks like they're doing well. Because you and I know this, like, I have never had as much access to how people and companies are doing than I did in 2017, 2018, 2019. By virtue of working with private equity companies, because they can find these things out very easily, because this company's always trying to be sold and trying to be bought. And so there are so many companies in our field that look like they're doing great, that are a disaster. Like, you would mind blown if you saw how bad their numbers were, and it seems like they're crushing it. And vice versa, companies you've never heard of or you would never predict are doing so well, they're absolutely crushing it financially in terms of meaningful impact. It's like the Facebook thing, like, don't compare your real life to someone else's highlight reel. Well, this is what we're doing with business all the time, right? You're doing the same problem. So for me, it's just, can we intersect, people who are passionate about health and fitness before they start coming up with some superstition about what meaning would be to them, and actually take them through a process to figure out, should you be a coach? Should you be an entrepreneur? Should you be a tech leader? Should you be a podcaster? There's all kinds of ways to be successful in this field now. One of my greatest triumphs from a recent event was Andrea, who's like my right-hand person at Changemaker Academy, was sitting next to a woman all day, and all day she's taking notes about like coaching and how to be a better coach, and she's trying to pull every lesson. And then I talked, and then on its own page she wrote, I don't think I want to be a coach, ! Like, she had this epiphany, right? I don't know if I saved or ruined her life there, but this is what I want people to do next, to think about, hey, where do I slot in all of this? And to see there's alternative paths to success that are worth thinking about, at least, I'm not trying to talk anyone out of what they're doing right now. It's mostly like, hey, let's do a little exploration, because there's financial success, and then there's sort of deep resonance with who you are. And hopefully, this is the dream. You can create both at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's more meaningful than that, really? I mean, it's just so powerful, and I can't wait to see the book and for it to get in some people's hands that I know will really benefit from the lessons you're sharing. So, so the book comes out again, depending on when you're listening to the show, the book comes out November 2nd. It's on pre-order on Amazon and a host of places. We'll have it in the show notes to go check out.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I'd love folks, if you're interested in checking it out. There's I put together, sort of for the podcast listeners, like a free download, so people can get a couple sample chapters and some bonus materials and stuff if they want. So if we could put those in the show notes, that'd be great. And then also, if you get those things and you like what you see, I can share an Amazon coupon code as well for some % off the book for folks who listen today. So
awesome.
It's just important to me that as many people who need this as possible get it. As you mentioned, like for me, this isn't about selling books and making money. It's not a driving force in my life, because I'm fortunate enough for that not to be. So now it's just been, how can we get this into everyone's hands that needs to have it? Because I think there's a lot of insights in there for folks at any stage of their journey, beginners for sure, but even people further along the path.
Yeah. And I love you, even you shared at critical stages during the PN run where you had to make some pivots, which a lot of these lessons are born out of that journey for you at critical points, during great success, right? Where a time when on the outside, everybody thinks, oh, John's doing great. Everything's fantastic. And internally you're just not,
struggling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was it. A couple people early on kept saying like, well, this book is for beginners, right? And I was struggling with that idea, because I'm like, it's not, but how do I convince people otherwise, right? How do you convince someone who's experienced and seasoned that they derive some value out of this too? And I was like, oh, I'm like, actually half the lessons in here are from when I was running a $100 million company. You know what I mean? So it's self-evident, right? Like I don't have to argue against that point. It's actually about that too,
Yeah. So we can really say anybody who is looking for more clarity of the right path for them, or feeling misaligned in their current role and structure today, that's looking for a better way to create alignment in their life and with their unique talents, abilities, and gifts to make an impact and deliver value.
Yeah, that's great. You're hired.
All right, good.
You're gonna be my marketing and PR guy.
I love it. I'm a fan, so I'm on board. Awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We're right about at the window of what we planned for today. But I guess to just finish off, some of the most inspiring things I think are not just your entrepreneurial journey, but around the personal work that you've done and continue to do, investing in yourself. And I think this is such an important area that, that not a lot of people are vulnerable about, to speak about their struggles and speak about the work required and how important that is internally in yourself, and how that, in your relationships, and how that just affects everything around you, and not just being a good entrepreneur, business owner, and successful in your career, but in every area of your life is impacted with, who you are when you show up, right? And what's in front of you. So this is an area that you've done tremendous work in. You're sharing a lot of those lessons in the book, but I'd love for you to just talk about just some other components of how you've done that work and what you advise to share with others. Because I think I actually yesterday just did an interview with a couple of our very successful clients in Australia, and they talked around how two business partners and how they had done a tremendous amount of work before they became business partners and during their partnership, especially for partnerships. I think is critical in business to be able to do that work individually and together, to be able to have just powerful communication, understanding, and in a business relationship, which is, just gets more important the more the company grows, the more pressure there is to perform, and all the things that you talked about with you and Phil, and how you navigated some of those pieces for yourself. So, having our relationship for a few years now, you've talked a lot about how it's impacted you, your marriage, your relationship with your children, and so many aspects of your life. And so, what would you say to people around not just the value, but your advice for doing that work and how to engage that work internally?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it leans back towards what we talked about earlier, which is like, um, I think everything is connected and relates to everything, right? So how do I become a good business partner is not a separate question from how do I be with people. Like, that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to be skillful with people, which means if you develop that skill and apply it, you should be skillful in your marriage, and you should be skillful with your children and with your parents and with your clients and with your business partner. Like, um, there is no set of hacks. I mean, you can try them, but people will see through that pretty easily. So for me, it's just been, how can I uh, develop and evolve as a consistent person who's skillful with others? I mean, unless you live in the wilderness in a cabin by yourself, skill with others may be one of the most important ways of being in the world. And for me, the most fundamental skill for being with others is asking thoughtful, compassionate questions and listening deeply to the answers. Um, the I don't know any other way to more quickly connect with people or to build ties and bridges and love and mutual respect than this. And it is so damn easy. You're like, how long will it take to become skillful with other people? And I'm like, well, if you think of everything as a discrete strategy, it would take a very long time because you have to learn a lot of strategies. And if you just think of it as this, I mean, how can I be a better listener? But being a better listener is almost like just chastising people. How do you listen better? Well, it begins with asking better questions. You have to like begin the listening process with a question that elicits truth or vulnerability or pride or respect or whatever, and then let people talk about those things and then really listen and respond to them in positive ways. And I think that defines good parenting, good partnership, romantic business. An example is, a thing that I do with our children, and we have four, is I ask them every few months, like, I start off with, hey, you guys know it's really important to me to be a good dad. It's one of the most important jobs I'll ever have in my life. And I want to do a really good job at it, but I can't do it by myself. So, like, can you guys spend a few minutes telling me like what I'm doing well and what I'm doing badly, like what I could do better at? And so I start this when our kids are like 3. And the answers that they give, our oldest is 9 now, are different between 3 and 9. But, at the beginning of this year, so springtime, um, I asked that of our boys, and they gave me some feedback, and some of it was kind of unexpected. They leaned into some things I didn't think they would lean into, and they didn't say some things I was for sure they would say, you know? And it was just such a humbling moment, because I'm like, uh, if I wasn't doing this intentional exercise, then I would have made assumptions about what I should do to be a better dad without ever asking the people I'm dadding, you know? And then I'd be investing in areas that weren't worth investing in and not investing in areas that were worth investing in. And so the boys gave me some feedback. And one of the things was, among a couple of others, well, the top 2 were like, um, spend a little less time working and a little more time having fun with the kids. Right now, this is strange feedback because I work less than almost any other dad that I know. I work maybe 4 hours a day. So the first response could be, well, these kids are crazy. They need to understand what reality looks like. So I'm going to teach them that I don't work very much. But that's absurd, because their experience is their experience. Like, trying to reason it out of them is folly. So I just started asking myself, okay, what is it that I do that gives them the perception that I work a lot? And could I change the way that I work or how I work so that they feel like I'm working less, even though I'm not? And so I committed to that for the entire summer. And our relationship is so different right now than it was in the spring. It's magical. And part of it is because I even asked the question in the first place. You're important. Your thoughts matter. Tell me them. The second part is then they told me, and I didn't dismiss it or argue it away. I acted on it. You know, I went out, set out to do better, and they saw and felt it. And I think in addition to the things that I improved per their, you know, comments, it's this meta mutual respect concept that's done most of the heavy lifting, you know? So that's just one example, you know, but I think it's really fundamental to how I view all these things. Like, you know, from what I've accomplished and from my unique abilities around communication and speaking and writing and all that, you know, it's really tempting for me to just talk all the time. It really is. It's what I would fall back on. And people could reasonably argue, hey, you should do more of that, you know? But I found that the antidote is the opposite. Like, a good life actually comes from the opposite of that, which is compassionate, thoughtful questions, and taking them seriously, listening for real. And then, like, bonus points if you act on it, you know? And I think if there was a secret sauce to this sort of phase of my life, it's that very thing. I think it's where empathy comes from. You know, I think it's where connection comes from, where compassion comes from, and meaningful relationships come from. So I don't think there's a hack to marriage and business partnership and parenting. I just think there's a way of being with people that works in nearly every situation. And it's founded on this principle, if you will.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't end on a better note than that. I think that is great advice for, as you said, anything in life with it's you and someone else. here's how to engage it better. So fantastic. Well, look, you know, there's so much more I know that you have to share with the world. I'm excited about this next phase of your journey with the book, with the academy, with meetups, with the events. We look forward to supporting that and at MP, and anything I can do to obviously help you get the message out. I know we're aligned in our mission and our work to help the industry grow and get better and support people in their careers and work they do. And I'm just really happy for this. You know, it's such a great, exciting time for you. It's awesome to see you go from strength to strength and continue to find, you know, your right balance for you, and doing it in such a powerful way that gets to give back to the world. So, you know, thank you for the work you're doing.
Thanks, my friend. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate the chance to kind of share some of the story today, and all the support that you've given me already, and the support that I know is to come. And again, to the folks who've listened in, like, thanks for spending time with us today. Hopefully there's some value that you can get out of this, and you can translate it into something very meaningful and uniquely you in the process.
Absolutely. And we'll have more in the show notes. Check them out. Go grab the free bonuses and worksheets, and go grab the book. And we look forward to more to come.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Secrets to Their Fitness Business Success podcast with me, Sean Greeley. If you like the show, then head on over to npefitness.com/podcast to download the show notes, subscribe, and enter to win over $25,000 in free prizes we're giving away to celebrate the launch of the show. Be well, and we'll see you in the next episode.